Welcome to Doc Discussions with Dr. Jason Edwards, brought to you by St. Luke's, St. Louis.
Welcome to Doc Discussions. This is Jason Edwards, and I'm here with my friend Jared Barton. Jared was with us on a previous episode. He's a CRNA, or a nurse anesthetist. And after the episode, we got to talking about the Dave Ramsey Baby Steps program and how that had a positive impact on him. And I thought, you know, one of Grandma's golden rules is don't talk about money, politics, or religion. And so I think if we have to break one of those rules, this is probably the best one to break. How you doing, Jared?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you, Jason, for having me back.
You bet, buddy. And so tell me where you were in life when you kind of came across this program. Were you out of nursing school, or where were you at?
I had just changed jobs and had gotten in the steel industry. And this was many, many years ago.
Steel worker.
So I was in a steel processing center.
How about that?
And somebody had mentioned Dave Ramsey and how it had just changed their life. And I had never heard of the guy, didn't know anything about the man.
Yeah.
And so I did a little research, and he had, he was pretty new as far as having the, audio collection that he had a book, but he also had it on an audio CD set. And I bought one, and it wasn't Financial University. It was the one before that. I can't remember. It was The Total Money Makeover is what it was. It was his first one that came out. It was technically the second one, because before that they did the envelope system, if you're familiar with that.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, they got rid of that, thank God, because that was, I never could have done that. But what it was, basically the way it started was I did the audio because I did not want to read the book because I was afraid I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Financial stuff is just not that exciting, right?
No, exactly.
So, I got the audio series and listened to it, and I just jumped right into it. I took, and, I've always been, pretty handy with Excel. So I went on my computer and made myself an Excel spreadsheet of everything that I spent my money on, because that was the big thing, is you got to write down, put pen to paper and write down every expense.
Now, can I ask you, and you can say no, roughly how much were you making working in that steel plant?
I was making $38,000.
$38,000. And so, and what year was that roughly?
90. Late 90s.
Late 90s. So not 38,000 in late 90s is not a bad salary.
No.
It's not flush with cash, but it's definitely solidly middle class.
I was fine.
Yeah.
I was fine. I had a little house. I had my first house.
Yeah.
I was young.
Yeah.
So first home, I was, had a degree in college already, and so, and I wasn't a dock worker, or I was a management.
Gotcha.
So, the people on the floor were making, around, $8 to $10 an hour at the time.
And that's probably about what a school teacher made back then, roughly.
That's correct.
And so you started off with this plan, and his system evolved into this baby steps plan.
Yes.
But the first step is to save $1,000.
Correct.
And so you do that. And then you start working through the other steps. It's pay off all debt was number 2.
Yes.
How did that go for you?
Well, can I back up and tell you one quick thing is I wasn't completely 100%, I'd say sold on the idea at first, but when I did actually because there for a couple of months, I just kind of did I guess like everybody, it's like my power bill's about, 100 and something ish. And so I never did. But then when I actually put the pen to paper, like he stresses, like if you would just listen to what he says, and actually did that, I actually gave myself a huge raise in pay. because I was blowing money. You know, stop by the gas station, get a Coke, get some chips, you know, blah,
Slim
blah,
Jims
blah, right? You know,
yeah.
Stop, get a hamburger on the way home, you know, and you don't realize how much that adds up. And even on a modest salary, I believe when I did put the pen to paper, I gave myself about a $500 a month raise in pay.
That's crazy. And especially back then, 38 grand.
And you're talking not doing without anything, just not just wildly blowing money.
Yeah.
You know?
And were you happier? Was your life better or worse?
No.
Right? It made no difference, right?
Absolutely not.
If you look at the two metrics of length of life and quality of life, it makes no difference, and you're saving $500 a month.
Exactly. And then after you get, because that's where you have to start, because you got to have really good data going into this, because they say garbage in, garbage out. So, and you got to do it. Now, the one thing I will say is I did not do it like to the dollar. I got a bunch of my power bills per se. Let's say it was electric power bill. Then what I would do is I looked, and over the course of so many months, it was about $110.
Okay. So you weren't shooting from the hip, but you didn't have a sniper rifle either.
Right.
You were just kind of somewhere in between.
It was about, and so for every single bill, every single instance where money was leaving my hands, I had it, almost identical to the bill, but I wasn't doing it on a month-to-month rolling basis, except for what I did was I did a column of my bills was set on my sheet where I had what they run normally. And then another column I did, and they were all actual.
Gotcha.
So if I said my power bill was 110 and it came in at 108, then at the end, and these all, you can self-tally. If you're a big nerd like me and know how to use Excel.
Yeah. Excel's great, by the way, too. So you can put a delta in there and it shows you the $2.
I have all different lines, subtracting, adding, doing all this for me. And that way, when you get to the end, then you start seeing, and it'll tell you whether you're in deficit or in the positive, you're in the green or in the red, and based on that, at the end of the month, it can't be in the negative.
Gotcha.
So you've got to really, if you don't start out real smart, you're going to end up really dumb at the end of the month, because you're going to be broke.
Now, so did you have debts at that time?
No, I had lots of debt. I had college debt. I had random stupid credit card debt.
Yeah, credit card debt.
I put some of my college on my credit card, so I had thousands and thousands of dollars.
And that's high interest.
Oh, of course. It's like loan sharks coming after you,
And so I did a little bit of research on credit card debt. It's currently at like $1.3 trillion nationally. It's about 47% of people have credit card debt, and on average, it's about a $7,000 bill.
Wow!
So credit card debt's a real issue in this world.
Yes.
And so, how did you go about paying off the debt? Because there's a mathematician would say find the highest interest debt and pay that off first, which is called the debt avalanche. And then the debt snowball is different. It's find the debt that is the lowest dollar amount,
correct,
and pay that off first.
Yes.
And, initially a smart person would say, that's dumb. You should pay the highest interest rate off. But the people who understand how humans work realize that it's actually better to pay the lowest off first, because then you get some positive feedback, and it makes you stick with the program, right?
So like you said, the very first step is get $1,000 for an emergency fund. That way, if something breaks, something cracks, something goes wrong, you can pay for it. You don't have to stop. You can just continue on, pay for that, get whatever, because $1,000 will fix most any emergency. God forbid, something major.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about, your X breaks, your fridge breaks, your car gets a flat tire, $1,000 cover it.
Yeah.
And then you fully fund that, and you just keep on trucking with it. But then you start paying off the debt. That's maybe step 2. Did
you do the debt snowball where you pick the lowest dollar amount? So you listened to them and you stuck with the program.
I did, because I wanted to start with the highest debt dollar amount, but it would have taken me years, and I think I'd have lost some.
And so they've done research since this and shown and proven that actually picking the debt with just the lowest amount, the fastest one you'll pay off. And you're making the minimal interest, the minimal payments on the other ones.
Correct.
And you throw everything towards the lowest dollar amount, not the highest percentage that you're paying as far as interest.
Right.
And data has shown that works better.
Right.
And so, and mathematically, you're actually not that much worse off either if you did the other perfectly.
And it's just something. It really is. It's so gratifying when you get to pay one off.
Yeah.
You're still in debt, but you're in debt minus one.
Yeah.
And it's just, you get this almost just this excitement of this works. I can do this, and when you pay off that first debt and you start on the next debt, you have a little bit more money to throw at that second debt. Mm-hmm. So even though that amount is larger, you have more money to throw at that debt to pay it off sooner.
So you have some psychological momentum and some financial momentum. Right. Yeah.
And so that's very helpful as well.
And then I had some people I know who I went to high school with who did this, and it was just in a few years, but they paid off. It was something crazy, and they had, I would say, 2 kind of normalish jobs. Nothing crazy,
right?
And I think one of them, the husband may have built a spec home or 2 in the summers, so he was doing some side gigs. But it was in the 200 and something thousand. Right. And I think they were both like solid jobs, like school teachers, but not crazy.
Right.
And a lot of people say, and you're eating, he always says, eat rice and beans. You're not spending much. You're not going out to eat.
Right.
Your friends are criticizing you, saying you're weird. Did you experience any of that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, good.
I'd never been really that big on, by the time I'd started this too, I wasn't in my teens or, in college anymore. So I was older, well, not old, but I wasn't still in that, go to the clubs and spend blow money type phase. So, not that big of a party or drinker, that type of deal. So that wasn't a big thing. I never really, went out to lavish restaurants, that type of deal. Always driven, cars that run.
So wasn't a giant deviation from your norm. And I think people think, going down this path and actually kind of getting some more discipline in my life financially is going to be horrible. I'm not going to go out to eat. But I think people actually would probably look back on it and say that was a kind of a cool time in life.
I think so too, because I'm off next week and I'm taking a staycation because I want to.
Yeah.
I could go somewhere and do something that if I wanted to, but there's things I need to do at the house. And so, that's just part of getting older, and if you just kind of get that mindset to where, this year we're taking to really nice staycations, and do something for yourself to make, or something for your house, something that, that you need to do or want to do, then it makes it fun as well. And at the same time, you're just banking that money
instead of blowing money on a big expensive vacation
that you can put towards your debt. So that it's he always has all these sayings. Live like nobody else today, so you can live like nobody else tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so just be frugal right now, and then you don't have to be later.
Yeah.
And being frugal doesn't mean being boring. It doesn't mean, the rice and beans sounds awful. And I didn't do that for sure. I wasn't eating no rice and beans, but I wasn't eating caviar and lobster either.
Yeah.
But all within reason.
Doc Discussions with Dr. Jason Edwards. Brought to you by St. Luke's, St. Louis.
It's, and people may find this hard to believe. It's actually hard to spend money on things that actually make your life better in the long run. And so if you had, and this is like research, there's research, on this. If you had two twin brothers and one of them broke their leg one day and the other one won the lottery the other day, and the day before, they'd both say they're 7 out of 10 happy. 2 years later, they will both be 7 out of 10 happy again.
Right?
It's because, or the lottery stories, you've heard that, or their life's way worse. But you tend to just kind of go in the short term, right? If expectations are exceeded in a short term scenario, then you're happy for the moment,
right?
Until you kind of re-equilibrate. Like if you get a new car,
right? It's
fun for 3 months or 6 months, and then it's just your car again. But you spend a bunch of money,
and for 5 years you have that note.
Yeah, and actually, kind of one of the things that's kind of the opposite is that in my mind is going on vacation, which I'm not a huge fan of vacation personally. because it feels like you're just, in my mind, blowing money and you don't have anything tangible. But I actually think going on vacation, you are at least left with like some memories.
Right.
And in a way, that may even be worth more than buying a thing.
Right.
You know, so even though it seems intangible, it kind of lasts longer.
It does. And again, you don't have to, travel halfway around the world.
For sure. Go to Nashville,
Right.
Go to Kansas City. I mean, you're going to have a good time.
I mean, I've been to over half of the states in the U.S. and I'd love to see the rest of them.
Yeah.
And that does not take a lot of money.
No, so, my kids, I've never taken them to Disney World. I've taken them to Silver Dollar City. They're 10 out of 10 happy. They're not going to get to 11. This is not this is not Spinal Tap. So that's a reference to an amplifier in the movie. But I mean, 10 out of 10, you're maximal happy. I'm not throwing shade at people who take their kids to Disney World, but I mean, to me, it's just a bunch of extra money, and like they're going to be happy with what they got. But I think kind of knowing that, and knowing that when you can, if you want, you can keep spending money trying to chase this high and keep momentarily being happy, but it puts you in a bad position, financially. And when you realize that, kind of Eastern philosophy that, if you want to be happy, think about happy thoughts.
Exactly.
It's in your brain. It's not, if you want to feel accomplished, don't go buy a Rolex. Just think about your accomplishments.
Right.
And subvert it, but you just don't want to get into a position, and sometimes you can't help it, but you don't want to get into a position where you're financially leveraged and you're kind of up against the wall, because there's no stress like financial stress. I mean, I've seen patients show up in the ER having panic attacks, and you just don't want to live that way if you can avoid it. And some people have bad breaks in life, no doubt about it. I mean, I definitely acknowledge that, but you want to do everything you can to prepare yourself. So if you do have a bad break, you're at least secure in that capacity.
And I don't know about you, but when I see somebody, and I don't know, hopefully I'm talking about you, I don't know what you drive, but when somebody passes me in the brand new super duper BMW XXIX, whatever, there's zero envy for me. I look at that, and the first thing I think of is, man, you're broke. You are more than likely you are broke. You're fixing to go to a house you can't afford. You're going to park your car in the garage of your house you can't afford.
It's a weird thing, because you're if you wanted to be, you can kind of cut out the middleman, right? If you wanted to think you're rich, you could look at the money that you saved, or you can spend all that money, not be rich, and let somebody else tell you you're rich.
Right.
Or you could just subvert the process and look at your account and be like, you know what? I've been disciplined. I can see in my account, there's money there, whether it's your retirement account or whatever. And it's people can spend their money on whatever they want. I don't want to, pass judgment necessarily, but you don't want to get on this hedonic treadmill where you keep buying something else. Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses.
And you don't have to be like old man Walmart. What was him? Remember he was known for driving this truck.
Oh, Sam Walton. Yeah, old Chevy truck.
Yeah.
and so, but there's something you kind of love about that story. Sam Walton, he's worth $80 billion, and
overall,
he's got an old Chevy truck. And there's something that's kind of great about that, and it's like the guy had some inner peace. And so you stuck with the program?
I did. I'm still on the program.
Yeah.
It's just basically just changed my way of thoughts.
Yeah.
My thinking process, how I act and react towards money.
Yeah.
Because once you get debt free, there's no feeling like it. And in fact, you never will. It doesn't matter whether you make, minimum wage or six figures. You'll never really know your income if you have all this debt.
Yeah.
Because you have what you make minus what the government takes and allows you to keep. And then after that, it's what all you've spent on your stuff.
Yeah.
And minus that is what you're now got to live on until the next either 2 weeks or week or month or what have you.
Yeah.
And so you never really realize your income, and you won't until you get done paying for your things.
Yeah.
And it's I always think, your grandparents, like we was talking about, if you couldn't afford it, you don't buy it.
Yeah.
You can't. There was no credit cards, and if you went to the bank, it was a handshake. Those type of days are gone.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people work hard, and you think, and you see social media has made this worse. You see your neighbor with this fancy thing or that, and you feel like, well, I deserve that, and it's like your bank account will tell you if you deserve it, but it's not going to make you happier. It will not in the long run. Momentarily, you'll be happy, but then in the long run, you're going to be worse off for it. And I do think, we're social animals. We compare ourselves to each other for sure. And so, and we're all, nobody's perfect with that. Right. I'm not, you're not, we all fall prey to that. Mm-hmm. But it is just good to know that there's, if you're looking for quality of life in the long run, think about your future self and try to have the discipline and develop the habits of being happy without spending money so you can have that financial security. I grew up and there's this guy I've known almost my whole life. And he had a below average job, okay, as far as income. It was an honest living. He was a good person. But as far as income, it was below the median. But he didn't spend much. He always had if he bought a car, it was used. He'd work on it, have it for a long time. I could probably name every car this guy ever had because there's only a few. And he's in his 60s now, and he's got a nice enough house. It's paid for. He's got, 2 cars, and he just lived a disciplined life. I mean, he just did not, spend, more than he had. And he's doing fine for himself. And I guess what I'd tell young people is, it's I think for the young people out there now, it's really tough for them. I mean, the amount, your rent payment is, or your house payment is as a percentage of your income is probably the worst it's been in 50 years due to the inflation, the last 5 years. But you can become financially independent. You can become wealthy, but there's no shortcut. Right. It's boring, and it's going to take a long time. And it's hard to suffer, or what you think is suffering today, by not kind of scratching that itch of buying the thing you got your eye on. But it won't make you happier, and you are going to be 65 at some point, and it's better to just try to have the discipline and develop good habits today and for your future self.
I think I think it's changed a lot too from like when, I was in my 20s, early 30s. The peer pressure is quite different because I didn't come from I didn't come from the side of town that had money. So, going to Europe was beyond.
That was only for rich people, right?
That's what you see on TV. So there was no, hey, come over and look at my new $70,000 truck, or, hey, we're just getting back from Ireland. There was none of that. So you didn't have to, it was a lot easier to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
You had a car that ran, that looked halfway decent, and you kept it clean and you took care of it.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much, you want to keep it, my car, I just washed it. It's clean. It looks real nice. That was how you kept up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
Your house was nice. You kept it clean. It didn't stink. It was, you kept all your maintenance done. The yard looks really nice.
Yeah. It's a totally different playing field now.
Right.
You post pictures online.
Yes.
If people see you wearing the same outfit, for 3 different events, then they act like something's wrong with you. And
Facebook is like, look at me book. It's what it is. It's show and tell book. It's
and there's positives and negatives, but I mean, it's not. It kind of cultivates some of this behavior that's not good for you in the long run.
You got to be happy with yourself.
For sure.
Happy with yourself. And
that doesn't come easy, right? No. You don't read a book and it happens.
No. And just like, about the whole Dave Ramsey plan is that you didn't amount all this debt overnight. You're not going to pay it off overnight. And it's like a diet, it was fun putting the weight on. It's not fun taking it off. Paying the debt off is not fun either.
And there's a lot of similarities, with dieting too. being kind of more like an engineer and like actually looking at the calories is the way to go. But not all of us, turn into an artist where we're like, yeah, I'm roughly about this,
Right.
and so, yeah, for sure. It's, but good things, they take time and they take discipline. And I think it's hard to replace that feeling of having that financial freedom. I mean, nothing you could buy would ever make you that happy or free.
And I tell you, for me personally, like as I was going through the steps, it was even just more motivation. It was more fun. It became fun. It became exciting. You know, that I'm fixing to hit another milestone.
A couple of, for sure. Like most people will describe it as like, no, that was a good time in my life, going through that. A couple statistics here to throw out. Worldwide, to be the top 1% of earners worldwide in America, or not in America, worldwide, it's, you got to make $65,000 to be the first percentile worldwide. And so just to put things into perspective, to be in the top 20%, which different people will use different numbers, but the top 20% considered upper class or at least upper middle class, as a household, you make $160,000. Okay. Which is a lot of money, but I think a lot of people who fall into this category, if you're what's 160, I'm guessing is like a firefighter and a teacher with some years of experience in a nice district, roughly. You don't, a lot of times I think because of all the stuff you see out there, people making that often probably don't feel like they're upper class.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And some of it too is perspective. We live in this metro area. This is all you see. Mm-hmm. I'm not from a metro area. I don't think you are either. No. And so I've my view of the world's a little bit broader maybe, but I mean, I think with inflation and just the comparison,
right,
is people in this demographic don't feel like they're upper class. And, I think, but when you compare yourself to your friends and neighbors, you don't know what's going on there. I mean, their whole lifestyle may be leveraged in debt.
Yeah.
What are some parting thoughts you have about all this, Jared?
Well, one of the things also is I look at housing. Housing is so expensive. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and you think it's kind of like way everywhere, but this was when I was looking for a house way back when, the average house was about $150,000. And, there was no way I could afford that. So I bought a house. My first house was $78,500, and it needed a lot of work. And I'm not a carpenter, but I had to learn how to become one.
Yeah.
I'm not a plumber or electrician, but you bet I learned how to be a plumber and electrician because I could not afford to pay these people to come in and fix my stuff because they made way more than I did.
Yeah.
My average, I paid one plumber one time to come out and fix a leaky sink. When I bought my first house, I'd been there maybe a couple months, and he worked for about 30 minutes, and he took a week's pay from me. And I said right then and there,
I'm a plumber.
I'm a plumber. I can learn. It did not look like rocket science what he did back there. So if he can do it, I'm smart enough. At least I can at least get near it.
Yeah.
So I learned how to do a lot of things, and so even today I have a real hard time paying someone to do something that I can do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, your time is worth something. It's really not. Because you're investing in yourself or your property or what have you.
And it's another skill, another experience to go through, which it broadens your.
And I actually, I hate to say it, but I kind of enjoy it. I don't, when I'm doing it, I'm one of those guys that, leave me in the basement and cover your ears because it might get colorful, because it never goes, because I don't do it all the time. I'm not a professional plumber or something. Yeah. So it never works out perfectly.
But how much pride do you have when you finish it?
When I finish it, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, that looks fantastic.
Yeah, you pound your chest. Even when I mow the yard, I'm feeling good about myself,
But like the housing has gotten to be so much that, I hear, and it pains me to hear. I just had a guy guy tell me, this was just a couple months ago, he's probably mid-20s, and he told me he and his wife, they just don't foresee in the future how they can buy a house.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything, but I thought, you're going to have to reevaluate what's important to you, because if I had that same mentality, then I would have never bought my first house.
Yeah, so the median home price now is, I think it's about $350,000, and that's just median. And then, but one thing is, the median home size is a lot bigger than it used to be too. I mean, just go drive, down in South City or and see homes that were built in the 50s or earlier. And I mean, they're small, they're 1,200 square feet, type of deal. And so we're just kind of accustomed to live, is what seems normal is to now live in I would say the average house is probably over 2,000 square feet. I could be wrong, but it's significantly larger than it was in 1990. And so,
and HOAs.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, not only do you have to pay this exorbitant price for this house, because it's got this brick sign in the front that says something that people recognize, the Cove or whatever it says, and it's like, oh, I live in the Cove. Well, now that you live in the Cove and you have this house that's, probably a little bit, it was a little tight to get in, but now every month you've got this thing called HOAs that you got to pay, and they're the people that it's like still living kind of at your parents' place. They tell you what color you can paint your house, like if you can have a car outside or not, what time you need to go to bed. I mean, all these things.
Yeah, you don't feel free.
Right. And so I find that, if you can do, this is still America. You still do what you want. If it just depends. You got to scale it back though, because what you do is like that house I bought. I worked on it. I mean, I was doing all that I could do for that house. And when I sold it, I made a pretty nice little profit from it. Rolled it into another house. Got in that house, did a whole lot of work on that house, sold it, rolled it into the third house. And, and you keep doing that until that's how you can still buy that, say, $100,000 house, but by the time you're in your third house, you're paying $100,000, but you're buying a $250,000 house. Yeah. Because you just keep rolling that equity into the other homes.
Yeah. For the young people out there, it's not going to come quick.
No, it's not fun.
And it's just brick by brick, step by step, but you might as well start today. Mm-hmm.
And the Dave Ramsey plan is a way to get you there, I think, faster, because
probably the best thing going out there.
I think it's faster because you're going to come to this one way or the other. I think you're going to have one day you and your family's going to have a sit down, and it's going to be like, we've got to do something because what we're doing is not working.
Yeah, the pesky shackles of reality always end up winning, don't they?
Right.
All right, Jared. Well, hey, buddy, I appreciate you, and it's always good talking to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Can I leave you one last thing?
Yeah, please.
Number 10 on the I think it's the 10th or the 7th of the plan is what I think is the most exciting to look forward to. That's the one where you can give.
Yeah, build wealth and give.
Right.
And so so you donate to things that you think are important.
Church, maybe the server you have, give her $100.
Yeah.
Haircut girl that, she's telling you a sad story, $100, you give her $100. You're not out that much. You just changed her week, her month,
and the feeling you get from that is longer lasting than the feeling you're going to get from buying that new pair of shoes.
Exactly.
And so if your goal is to optimize your length of life and quality of life, your return on investments typically better with giving.
And by that point, you're already to the last baby step. So everything's paid for. You've got your nest egg. You're pretty much should be set.
And you're making a positive difference in this world.
And now you can go out and you can help others.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing. It was just once you get to the very end, it still continues. Because now you have a chance to change someone else's life and be positive. Yeah.
And you sympathize with people who are kind of in the same position you were a long time ago.
We've all been down the same road. Most of us all.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Yeah. Everybody's going to have tough times, and we're all in this world together.
Right.
And we got to try to take care of each other. But it really, you got to take care of yourself too.
Right.
And there's something called the Monte Carlo simulation. and we use it for radiation calculations. But it's a Monte Carlo is a roulette wheel.
Okay.
And so it started off doing multiple runs on a roulette wheel. So it would be like 1,000 balls in a row and seeing what numbers it landed on. And that's called a run. And it became a mathematical way to simulate things. And if you looked at your life like a Monte Carlo simulation, like over the next 20 years, your life, there's 1,000 different yous that could exist. But if you're making moves today that are going to help kind of any of those potential yous, if you looked at your life like a simulation, a lot of things could happen.
Right.
But you want to do things that kind of have some respect for the future version of you, whatever that may be. And it could be anything. And I think, having the discipline to do that, finding meaning in your life and purpose. I mean, people will keep working even if they're totally financially free because they feel like they have obligations to charities,
right?
And obligations to people
or family
or whatever. And they feel good about that,
right.
And
their legacy.
I think in life, it's good to have purpose. It's good to be on a mission. It's good to try to make a positive difference in this world. And most people who, what's the meaning of life? That's what it is. Right. Find things you think are important and try to make them better.
Exactly.
You'll get all kinds of philosophies, but I think if you put them into an AI and averaged them out, it would be something like that. And I know it's gratifying for me to give. It's probably the happiest moments of the year are when you're, somewhere and you have the opportunity to give a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
But like you said, you got to help yourself first. It's like they say on the airplane, you always put the oxygen on yourself.
Yeah. Save yourself.
Because if you start putting it on others, you're of no good to anyone.
And another good kind of saying about life is nobody's coming to save you.
Right.
You've got to save you.
Exactly.
And that's good news and bad news because I don't want it to be up to somebody else. But the bad news is I've got to do the work.
And hard living, hard choices, I think, have escaped most people these days.
Yeah.
A lot of the youth that are coming up are not being told no, are not doing without. They don't understand doing without. Doing without is like time out for 10 minutes with their favorite game. Not that we can't afford that game. You can't have that game. We won't get that game.
It's hard people create good time. Bad times create hard people. Hard people create good times. Good times create soft people. And it feels like we're in that phase of the cycle. And you got to develop self-discipline in anything in life.
Right.
We're not perfect. Forgive yourself for sure for your weaknesses and your past transgressions. We all have them. Just move forward and figure out, how can you have some respect for your future version of yourself.
Right, exactly.
All right, buddy. Hey, good seeing you. Good talking to you.
You as well. It's always fun.
Thanks, Chris, for your work here today, and Todd as always, and Kelly. We appreciate everybody in the staff. That's all for today. Jared Barton, you're my man.
All right, thank you.
Join us next time for Doc Discussions with Dr. Jason Edwards. It's medicine for your body, mind, and spirit.